G'day YouTubers, it's Harry Houdini here in Australia down under. So I might be the wrong way up on your screen, don't know. We're definitely upside down here. Now, it's summertime here, it's getting hot, it's a bit of a stinker today. It's in the 90s in Frankenfurter, I think, 30 degrees here. A bit hot for gluing and painting, but I thought, why not make a video and show you what I've been up to. Now I haven't really sort of finished anything lately, so that's why there sort of hasn't been a part 4, part 5, this is what Harry Houdini's been doing, because I'm sort of in limbo. I've got Skodas that need weathering, I've got tiny little Stugs that need finishing off and PE, and I've got BT7s that, oh, there's a bloody ton of PE going on that thing. There's lots of little projects, and as well as that, the Riverside Scale Modelers Club, well, you know who you are, the Riverside guys down in Brisbane, I go down to see them once a month. Well, they gave me this kitty hawk thing, war hawk to make, and it's a filler queen. I have to buy more filler to fill the sucker up. Anyhow, enough rabbiting on about that. Let me show you some things I have been doing. Now, you may not know this, but I am a virgin. Well, let me qualify that. I'm a mud virgin. Now look, I build tanks and planes and battleships, and you know, and I weather them and I streak them and I wash them, but I've always been just a little bit hesitant to throw mud all over those tracks that I've spent forever weathering and getting those lovely effects on, or muddying up the running gear when I've spent ages trying to get the suspension looking really nice. So I've kind of held off on the whole mud thing, but no longer. I'm trying to do a little bit, and here's what I've done so far. Here's an old GPA of mine, and I'd sort of used a weathering stick to put a little bit of muddiness on the bottom there, but it's not really working, is it? The wheels, they're too damn clean, and there's no splatteration. So, I did this. What do you think? It's a start. And I did that using some pigments, which I then fixed in, and they were from MIG. And then I used also some MIG soil enamel wash and splattered that on using a toothbrush. Now I'm going to show you how I did all these things, but we can do it on something else. I'm just showing you my experiments. And I also went back to the T34. I don't know if you can see in there. Is there enough light? Well, anyhow, it's nice and dark in there inside the wheels now, because at the last Riverside Scale Modelers meeting, Bernard, I took this along to show everybody because I was pretty happy with the top half. I'd made that about a year ago, and I know I was pretty happy that I'd sort of got that out of it. It's just the Tamiya kit. It's an old classic, squilly-year-old bloody 20th century sort of kit, but I sort of managed to get something happening out of it, and I put some Edward PE on it. It was my very first Edward PE, and it's sort of sold me on the whole idea of doing PE, and I weathered the track links, and I studied how they would be from photos, and I weathered them up, and that's how I got my sort of track link weathering method. And I was pretty happy with it, but then Bernard took a photo like that and looked right up its innards, and I'd forgotten these things originally sort of were designed to be motorised, and so there were holes in there and business all for the motorised version, and I hadn't done any weathering underneath the fenders. So I have now, and I don't think you can actually see it, which is good, because now you can't see in there because there's mud and shit and crap and God knows what, and I've muddied and weathered that up, and I also silvered the rims, and I had a lot of fun with that, also learning about how I can do mud without going too far, because I still want things to be pretty. So that was stage 2. So I sort of got a bit more adventurous and got a bit more excited, and I dug out my SU-152. Now here she is, and as you can see in there, you can clearly see I have not done anything. I stuck the tracks on and glued this one up, and I just didn't do anything inside under the fenders. So it's boring. So I used what little skills I'd acquired, and I did that. What do you think? Is that better? Can you see? There's mud and there's gunk and there's stuff and there's splatterations in there. But I've done it to a level that I'm happy with. because I don't really need it to look that overly muddied, crazy way. I may do that one day, but I don't want to do that in these models. So, what I thought I'd do in this video is I'll show you what I've learnt so far and how I accomplished getting that. Now, okay, here we are, and we are in my patented little cardboard spray booth. Now you might be able to see a bit more clearly the kind of mudded effect that I have accomplished here, and you may even see there's tiny little splatterations on the underside of my fuel tanks. And that's all I wanted. I only wanted a simple effect. I didn't really want to go to town with heaps of mud. I mean, I may do that another day, but this just breaks up that boring panel at the back there. Okay, because on the other side, where I have done nothing, you'll see, it just looks like a toy, you know, fresh from the factory. Yes, which is fine. So, how did I accomplish this? Well, it really wasn't that hard, actually, once I sort of learnt my method. Now, first off, I need some pigments. Now, these actually happen to be Humbrol. This is a Humbrol weathering powder, but because that's what my local hobby shop had. But really, any sort of little mud effect pigment will work. And this is a nice little dark one, which I chose. Well, I chose because it's the only bloody one they had. So there you go. Now, what I found is dry brush and randomly splodge on, although you are looking for more mud at the bottom, of course. Mud will accumulate around things, and this is just dry pigment, and I'm just basically knocking it up into areas where I think it'll go. I'll put a little bit on the wheels, you know, not much. I don't really want to mud things up too. And that's about it. Okay, so already you can see there's quite a bit of muddiness happening. Alright, so you sort of get that, and the beauty is that this is being pigmented, I can sort of mess around with it and flop it about. It's only dry pigment at this stage, can't really go wrong. Alright, so I'm happy with that, that's all I needed. And that's the muddiness that I want from this. So the next stage is, I'm going to use this thing called a fixer. And essentially, I'm not quite sure what this thing is, it doesn't actually tell you. But I think you can pretty well do a similar sort of thing if you used white glue. Or you could use some sort of thinners and that might bind this and make it work. I don't know, but I chose the MIG fixer because it's supposed to do this job. And that's what I needed it for. And it seemed to work. Now, if I can find my bloody paintbrush. Oh, dear, dear, dear. Alright, so, fixer. It has a bit of an acrylic-y smell to it. Getting some fixer on your brush, you just drop it in. That's what I found. You literally splatterate it in. I found if you actually go down and paint with it and get too close and start, you know, with brush strokes, and then you end up really painting with the stuff, it then becomes a pigment that you're actually painting with, and you know that may be an effect. But I wanted it to have a bit of a raised and rough and textured look, just like mud. And the pigments will do that if you kind of just give them a whole lot of the fixer. So you kind of just drop it in and it runs everywhere, and it's as easy as that. So there's not a lot of skill required, you just basically throw it in everywhere and make sure that you get it on everything. Now, one little trick, or one thing I found is, as you're doing this, your brush gets pigment on it, and now it actually can be used as wash. How about that? So now my brush, because it's got... Now I probably shouldn't have used the same brush in with the bottle here, but seeing this is the only pigment I've got, and I'm just learning, and I'm quite happy to buy another bottle of the fixer down the track, I'm just using this. I might even get a bit of pigment on there. I'm getting a couple of things happening here. So I'm getting a bit of a dark wash, which is handy to bring out all the details. And I've got a nice big almighty mess there, haven't I? Okay, so let's adjust the light a bit. Maybe it'll be a bit... don't know. Anyhow, it's very messy, but it's going to look exactly like that other side. Now, what I found is, the first time I did it, I left that to dry and then did my other stuff. Well, you don't really need to. Not at all. I mean, you don't need to wait for anything to dry, I found. What you can do is you can start applying the next stage, which is, I'm going to use some, this is just cursed soil, it's just a nice light sort of sandy soil colour that I basically got. And I've also got some acrylic brown here. Now, you might say, you're mixing things together. There's a method in my madness. Because oil and water don't like to mix, you get interesting effects. So, this is 100% acrylic, and it's Russian brown, so it's right for my tank. But it's a shade lighter than that. I'm going to put that on a toothbrush. Right? Crazy, isn't it? And then I'm going to flick it on. And you probably could do that with a toothpick rather than using your finger, but seeing as it's water-based, I'm not too worried. Not too worried at all. Now, this may be too subtle for the camera to pick up at this point, but I'm actually getting little particles of that brown in there. And because it's oil and water together, and they're not happy, it tends to sort of sit in a funny little way, and it creates little ripples and splodges, which is exactly what I wanted. And I want that kind of randomness and a bit of patina and that sort of thing, and that will happen. All right. In fact, there's more splatterations all over the inside of my spray booth. I think you can see it everywhere. So it is there. It's kind of splattered around, gone everywhere. Now, the next trick is the soil, right? Now, I should start with another brush, but I'm not. I'm going to be incredibly naughty here. Well, actually, what I'll do is I'll shake. Because basically this is going to be my weathering formula. I'm not too worried about there being a bit of contamination of one thing or the other. You shouldn't do this. You should do this properly and basically use a clean something or other for each thing that you're going to do. But I'm not. So again, I've got some paint on here and I'm going for some big splodges. Now I'm going to have to clean up afterwards because I'm getting this all over me, but I'm not too worried. It's not a lot. It's not like I'm actually sort of bathing in it. And I don't know if that's going to show up. It's probably too subtle. Can you see any of that? Does it show? It is working, believe me. That I'm getting a very light sort of splatteration as though mud had got flicked up. Right? I'll show you the effect, say, down here, right? Look, see that? That's what we're getting here. And it doesn't matter that it's hitting the tracks because that's what it would do in the real life. See how I'm working from the bottom up? I'm working in the direction that a splatter would occur. And that seems to add some realism. So I'm working from the wheels which would kick things up and I'm splattering. And it is going up into all little areas and nooks and crannies where you'd expect it to go. Okay? So that's given me the beginnings of my effect. Now I will need to do more. I probably want to get some more dark pigment under there, and I could do another trick with that. Oh, sorry about all the banging. Okay, so if I do it this way, I'll put a little bit of pigment in a receptacle, and then I will get some of my, in this case, odorless thinner. This is like an odorless tips, right, which I prefer because then I'm not going to basically give myself too much nasal offension. Now I know I should use another clean brush. I don't care. This is mud. This is weathering. Okay, now underneath those fenders there, I really would like to get some more mud. So I'm going to splatter that up all in there. And so this would be so much easier if I was doing this with everything off. And that's probably the way I prefer to do it. So again, I've got, that's pretty thin, my weathering here, so my solution. I've really muddied up and got everything that I want out of that now. that'll do. Now I could add a little more. I want a bit more sort of a muddied effect, where it's going to accumulate. And it doesn't matter if I've accidentally banged the tracks. That's all part of the joy of all this, because they would get a little bit of mud on them too. So really you can go to town. All right? It's up to you as to how far you take this. I'm just showing you some of the little methods and tricks that I've picked up. And it's really not that hard. Now it's just up to your creativity and your imagination as to how far you'd go. If you had a couple of different shades of pigment, and I'd recommend that would probably be a better way of going, I'd suggest you have a dark and a light. And with your splatteration, again, a dark and a light, although I've kind of cheated by mixing acrylics and enamels. Not a good idea normally, because you bugger things up when you mix those two. But here, because you want kind of welling effects and streakiness and blobbiness, all the things you're normally trying to avoid when you're painting, you can actually mix those two together and it creates some interesting effects. At least I think so. So there you go. That's the kind of way that I managed to accomplish some mudding on my tank. And I'll probably let this dry and have a look and see how it is. And I might go and tweak and add a little more, or can always take my thinners out and reduce a little bit if I think it's gone a bit crazy in some spot. It doesn't matter. It's mud. Mud goes into all kinds of weird, wonderful places. So that's the way I did it. What I'll do after this is I'll show a series of photos, and they'll sort of show probably a bit clearer kind of the effects I ended up getting. There you go. What do you think of that? Bit muddy. Oh well, muddying things up this week. That's all I've been doing. Making an absolute bloody pigsty. But that's the hobby, isn't it? And it's sort of the fun of it and the art of it. So that's a technique I found, and I might find a better one. You might know a better one. So comment, please. If you think there's a better way of doing it, or you think I'm bugging it up, let me know. There's more than one way to skin a cat. Oops, shh, don't say that sort of thing. Basques around here somewhere. Anyhow, that's mud for this week. And I'll get back to you next time, and I'll try and get some more work done on that BT7, because that's coming on nicely. I have been sticking all tiny bits of photo etch on that. You'll see. You'll see. All right, well, that's it for now. So it's goodbye from Australia, and it's hooroo from Harry Houdini.